Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod 3 Bullies Podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to a very, very special edition of the Pod Street Bullies.
Just the two of us. You can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
That
You
is
and I.
right. That's John. Yep.
What's going on, everybody? I'm John.
And folks, we're Casey-less. We're Hoagie-less. This is the original duo that you all fell in love with. Derek and John. John and Derek. Doesn't matter the order.
Right.
Just as good either way. We're here to break down the draft. Everything. Hayes got traded. The NHL draft in which the Flyers did better than most teams, it sounds like, according to some experts. We've got some free agency signings and some not signings as well that we need to talk about, as well as a certain situation with one of the Russian players. Let you guys guess which one.
Not the Russian player.
Not the Russian player, but one of the Russian players. But we want to get into the first thing here. We'll go kind of chronologically, like John had alluded to here before the episode started. Kevin Hayes, just before the draft, traded to the St. Louis Blues for a sixth-round pick, 50% salary retention. How thrilled are you?
Not quite the deal everybody had their panties in a bunch about over 2 days. I mean, this was kind of the kind of trade that I was expecting to happen when it came to Kevin Hayes being traded.
But they get your hopes up, and then it's just...
Right. I mean, but it was like half the Flyers team and a partridge in a pear tree being sent to the St. Louis Blues. So you kind of had a feeling that was going to fall through. And you know it's a big deal when one of the people who broke it feels the need to like write a story about that 24 hours that went through it. Like, because you didn't get to actually,
hour by hour, this is what I was doing. This is what I heard. Like, kudos to Anthony Sanfilippo on that one. Like, I'll give him that. And like, you hear things from sources. It isn't always true, but hey, things happen. Things fall through the crack. Torrey Krug doesn't waive his no trade clause.
Sure.
Up yours, buddy. I get it, though.
Right.
Not too mad. But regardless, it was supposed to be part of a bigger trade. Lots of names thrown around. It doesn't matter at this point. The Flyers had to retain half of his contract, which equals out to about $3.5 million for the duration of the rest of his contract. In your opinion, smart or not?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Kevin Hayes was not going to work on this team anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think he made it abundantly clear. I think John Tortorella made it abundantly clear. And this trade makes it abundantly clear where it's just by any means necessary, we need to get this guy off the roster.
Right.
And that's what happened. Obviously, the return is close to nothing, and you have to retain 50% for 3 years. I guess if you're thinking long term with the Flyers being in a rebuild, like what are you really going to do with that money anyway?
Sure.
It's just it's too bad that the relationship really just went that sour where it's like this guy, you couldn't even like creatively think of a way to make this work.
You couldn't salvage the relationship at that point, whether it was his relationship with Hayes, whether it was the perceived attitude of Kevin Hayes as well. It's a shame to see it all kind of fall apart and end up the way it did. But if certain things are true that we've heard about it, Kevin Hayes shouldn't be anywhere near this type of locker room right now.
Right.
And that makes complete sense. I get it. I applaud the effort to get him out. Sucks. Doesn't make it burn any less.
Right. Right. I mean, two things I think about. One is it's him on the roster does block your youth, right? I mean, That's the obvious thing, right? You have to put him in a position where hopefully you're going to get the most out of him. But considering the circumstances right now, that's going to block a younger player that you're hoping to see whether or not you have something in.
But has that not been like the common thing to turn to for any player that they sign? I mean, we could get into it with the free agents that they just signed.
I want to save some of that for when we talk about the free agents, because I do think that there is like a bottom six mentality that I think the Flyers are having, or even just the fourth line mentality where they're like, this is where we're going to stash our culture and our, our veterans. But I also think that like Kevin Hayes just had this hanging out with the boys mentality, that
nonchalant, laid back, just do your thing.
And as fun as it was for like social media and all, it just did not translate into winning hockey.
Right. I forget where I saw it, and I think it was Sealski's article. Wrote about like he was a perennial doghouse, blah 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 blah, and he put him. And I'm like, he kind of put himself there. He was complaining about Tortorella essentially killing his trade value, and I'm like, if you really think about it, Hayes kind of shot himself in the foot there. Like if he wanted, if he played better, he would have upped the value. Like this isn't Tortorella's fault. This is squarely on Kevin Hayes' shoulders.
Right. And the marriage just didn't work. And I think that when we discussed like players that would fit into kind of the Tortorella way of doing things, we were all on the fence about Kevin Hayes.
We were all hopeful, but I feel like we were hopeful with damn near everybody on this roster, and just didn't work.
Right. But I think like one thing you're noticing is that whether it's Tortorella or Briere, they are identifying the players that just aren't going to work. I mean, you could say that with Provorov. You can say that with an upcoming trade with D'Angelo, right? I think that they've identified players that don't really fit the identity that they want moving forward, except now they've got Travis Sanheim for 8 years. But,
they could still make it work, but good God, I'd hate to see the way that deal would be. But word of the Tony DeAngelo trade too being hung up because of the fact that people are trying to circumvent the cap, which I find is complete bullshit. But
the things that the league decides to latch on to,
like that's not cap circumvention. Like that's cap circumvention right there. But Kyler Yamamoto being traded only to be bought out the next day, like that's not circumvention of the cap. No, sir.
Right.
Hell out of here. Ridiculous.
But anyway, I don't think we should spend any more time talking about Kevin Hayes, except this could potentially be the last time we can put Kevin Hayes in our title.
You're right. And I was you read my mind. I was just about to say that. So this
we'll have to
episode,
find a way.
This will be somewhat of our ode to Kevin Hayes here in a farewell podcast episode. Tip of the cap to you, pal. Have fun in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, again, kind of going in chronological order, that really led us up to the NHL draft.
Yep.
A draft in which I had to call John while the Flyers were making their pick because my nephew had a baseball game. Don't regret going to the baseball game. Had a blast. But the Flyers with the 7th overall pick ended up with a potential superstar following on their laps.
Yep.
It took Matvei Michkov. I don't think I might have told you this, but as soon as I hung up the phone with you and I got into an area where cars weren't like around me, I started shouting like I was so happy. I don't know. I know I was kind of wishy-washy on past shows just based off the whole Russia thing, but good God, man, when it happens like that, you can't help but be excited.
Well, it's exciting. We've wanted excitement around this franchise for so long.
Boy, did we get it.
That like just the idea of this guy being comparable's freaking Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, putting up more points than him and Pavel Bure.
Right. So I mean, just that is awesome. Like just that we have a player like that to be excited about. Of course, you've got the Russian factor and all of the whether he's going to come here. I'm pretty sure he's eventually going to come here. He sounds excited to be a part of the Flyers organization.
Right. And based off of things I've heard, this is the organization that he wanted to come to.
Right.
So take that for what you will, but that's pretty damn exciting.
You know, in terms of like how it all went down, I said it at the last show. I did not think he was going to get out of the top 5.
That was a surprise.
I
Very pleasant surprise.
I really thought that we were all just talking because it was something to talk about, you know, or it was like,
Mhm.
oh, could he drop to Washington?
Right.
There's all of this. But when Montreal didn't take him,
And Carey Price couldn't pronounce Reinbacher's name.
my God. I know.
That was good. That was good.
It was like painfully awkward to watch at first because he's like looking around and you don't know if he's messing with people.
If it weren't for the fact that he had just gone through the league's he missed the whole season. Yeah, I would have alluded to him being
right,
probably drunk, but we know that's not the case.
Right. Yeah, I know. It was pretty wild. And then Arizona just went and Arizona'd it.
Simashev.
Yeah, which
good for them.
Good. I mean, whatever. Like, I guess just do your thing. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, good on Briere for just taking the swing. I think that's what this franchise needs right now. Yep. I mean, and you're looking at the potential face of the franchise. I mean, yes, we have to wait, but think about it, man. And like, this is the thing. People are so latched onto this. Oh, we've got to wait for his contract to be over, but
so be it.
He's going to be 21.
Yeah. Plenty of time. Plenty of time.
And how many players actually play their first year in the NHL, like right out of being drafted? Like,
right.
He arguably could, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bedard will. Michkov, if he came over, I think would. Right. I think we'll probably see Fantilli. Well, no, there's talk about him going back to Michigan.
Oh, is
Babcock's
there?
Back. But yeah, I'm kidding. There's nothing to do with Babcock, to my knowledge. Right? Yeah. That's probably why he's going back to Michigan. But you know, certain players you see coming straight out of junior, straight out of college, foreign leagues or anything like that. First year in the NHL, and they're in. You know,
but others, but it's not normal.
Right, it's not. It's a very abnormal circumstance because out of the 300 something players drafted,
right,
only a handful really start out, and some of them end up on the team by the end of the year, sure. But you know, your Bedard's absolutely.
Right.
Michkov probably could have been one of them,
right?
But you know, hey, there's a contract to honor. The agreement between the NHL and the KHL is on hold, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But there's like a gentleman's agreement there where, we'll get into that with Fedotov in a little bit here. Right. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like, I think that because it's clear this is going to take a little while for the Flyers, like, isn't it nice to think like he's not going to develop that losing culture that people always say, right? He's going to kind of come in when the Flyers are starting to figure their ish out.
Yeah, and he had that great quote about how, like, you know, the timeline, this and that, and he's like, well, I guess we're going to have to win when I come over.
Such a professional wrestling quote.
Right, and I'm like, I love this man. I love this man.
Right.
Oh, it's just...
I'll tell you what, brother.
We're going to start winning when I say we're going to start winning. It's like Hulk and Sheik all in one. but if you really think about it, too, in terms of who was available at that time, I really do think that Michkov was like, and I'm going to throw this out here kind of loosely, I really think he was the perfect pick for the Flyers there. Timeline fits perfectly. I think the skill 100% is there.
High-end talent.
Exactly. Something that for how freaking long have we been sitting here clamoring for, talking, we need high-end talent. This is our high-end talent here. And guess what? That's going to attract more. Like, I mean... and this is completely fantasizing here, but think about down the line when he does come over, Ovechkin's in the twilight of his career.
Right.
You think he's going to want to play with Michkov just 1 year? Just 1 year. I would love it.
That'd be something, wouldn't it?
Right. Now, Cam York's going to have to give up his jersey number, but you know, so he'll get a nice watch out of it or something. I don't know.
Right.
A nice car, probably. Christ. But no, I was so blown away and just so happy. Like, this is the first time I've felt genuine excitement about an offseason move from the Flyers up until today no, I'm kidding.
Well, I think like this is the first opportunity in a really long time the Flyers have a potential superstar in the midst. Like, Claude Giroux has been our superstar for how long? But he's
Right.
the kind of person where it's like Flyers fans have to convince the rest of the NHL that he was a superstar.
Right.
Like Matvei Michkov, that's not going to be the case. Like
His play will do the rest.
right. There's going to be like, no, you don't understand.
Like, no, I don't think you understand, sir.
Right. So, I mean, that's exciting. Of course, a million different things can happen from now until when he can come over. He is still just a prospect, so I try to pump the brakes, bringing back that old phrase a little bit, but like you can't help but be excited.
Right. I mean, this 100% makes up for missing out on Bedard, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I would have loved Bedard. Don't get me wrong. I'd have taken him over Michkov probably.
Right,
but
of course.
God damn, is that a nice consolation prize?
Well, I mean, and most people said that Michkov really wasn't that far behind him if you took away the Russian factor.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm convinced if you took away the fact that he was Russian and playing in Russia, like there would have been
Second
some
overall.
very serious debate between the two. Like, could we have seen like a Nico Hischier, Nolan Patrick situation?
I don't think so.
No?
I think it would have been like at the time, like a McDavid Eichel, where it's like, you know what, this guy really could be a first overall pick in any other draft, but this guy is.
Like, what sold me is the fact that Corey Pronman had such positive things to say about him when he never has anything positive to say about the Flyers.
No,
ever.
he does not.
And like, even when he was talking about Bonk too, like he had some nice things to say about him. And I mean, getting to that pick here, like, where do you sit with that pick in terms of, was it good, bad? Did they go for need? Did they go for best player available? Like, what do you think there?
Well, I think that it made a lot of sense to go D because it's like, and he's a right shot D which like, I think we're going to talk a little bit either about it today or the next show, but the defense on this team in the NHL and in the pipeline is not good right now. So they needed to address D. I was a little leery about leaving with Gabe Perreault on the board just because it was Rangers like more offense too. But it was a smart pick. I think that everybody you talk to says he's going to be an NHLer. I don't think anybody says he's going to be a top two D.
No. If he's a middle pair guy, I'll be happy.
And his last name is freaking Bonk.
Right. I mean, son of a guy who used to play for the Flyers too, with a sweet mullet, may I add.
Right. But I mean, how much fun can you have with Bonk? I mean, already I'm going with Reagan. Who was the second pick for the Flyers? She goes, Bonk.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
Great name. I think anytime he rings one off the post, you got to yell Bonk.
Right.
But, aside from that, smart pick. I think getting more defense is always a good thing, considering the pipeline, like you had alluded to. What shocked me the most, I think, about this draft, and I don't want to say I'm completely shocked or there's any type of ulterior motive, but they took 2 goalies in this draft. And the one was the highest rated North American goalie, which fantastic. You could always, I'll preface this, you can always add more depth when it comes to goaltending. And I'm a huge proponent of that.
Yep.
But 2 goalies, like,
a
lot of people were kind of like, what's going on with Carter Hart? But
well, before I get to that, I do want to say one more thing about Bonk.
Right.
One thing that I want people to understand is that he plays for the London Knights, which is essentially run like a professional hockey team.
Right.
Like when it comes to junior hockey and development, like they are the cream of the crop.
The creme de la creme.
Right. So he's in a really good spot. And that's that. I think with goalies, 2 things. One, I just think that they had them both on their board, and when they realized that the second guy, I don't remember what his name was available, they just couldn't pass him up. Where it was just like, he is ranked higher than the next person we would take, where it's like, we can't pass this up right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one to draft. Yeah. Or a tough one to pass up. I mean, you're looking at, Christ, I can't pull up the picks, but regardless.
It's all good, man. It also has nothing to do with Carter Hart.
No, I'm convinced of that too.
I mean, I think if you wanted to spin it at all in the Carter Hart way, it's okay. They're starting to like have preliminary discussions about whether or not he's interested in staying, and he's hinting at no.
Right.
But either of these goalies are 3, 4, 5 years away from even sniffing the Flyers roster.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately you think, I mean, we haven't seen anybody come through even from what is it, the 2020, we're getting on the cusp with Forster and Andre.
Right.
But like
But
2021,
goalies are
we haven't
different beasts,
seen.
Ben.
Right. They take much longer to develop.
Right.
I mean, you've got Kolosov, who was picked in 2021 that we haven't seen yet, but heard great things. I mean, the last goalie that they drafted before him was Roddy Ross, and he's gone. You know, after
Urson was what?
Urson was 2018.
18, yeah.
Yeah.
Sandstrom
And I mean, we're
was
seeing
15?
him. Sandstrom, I believe, was 15. Ustamenko was 17.
Right. So
Hart was 16. I think that was the only goalie that draft. Yeah, because Sandstrom and Tomic and Fedotov were all in the 2015. They took 3 goalies that draft.
right.
Same draft as Provorov and Konechny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goalie obviously was a big thing they addressed, and they also went for like the skill.
Mm-hmm.
There were very little
Cernak.
safe picks here where it
Not
was
Cernak,
like
sorry, Southern.
there's something here about this person that can like put them in a top 6 role down the future, you know.
Right. High risk, high reward. You're looking at guys that can play, guys that can create, guys that have the stick handling, creativity, like Denver Barkey, I think was a good pick. I mean, there's a lot of almost reminiscent of some of Chuck's earlier drafts where you're looking at those boomer bust guys that could either break out and be fantastic or just amount to ECHL, AHL tweeners.
Right. Well, and I think that there's this mentality that's coming where it's like we can fill our bottom 6 with free agents.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We can fill our bottom 6 with cheaper free agents, especially the 4th line. I'm going to stop saying bottom 6. We can fill our 4th line with free agents. Right. We want to draft players that have a ceiling beyond that. Also understanding they might not even get to the show.
Right. Yeah. I mean, 5 years down the road, if you're going to tell me right now, like, hey, Denver Barkey's going to be a top 6 forward for the Flyers, you're like, oh, cool. Like, great.
Right.
You know, we got him for a 3rd round pick. That's awesome.
Right.
You know, you sit here and tell me Yegor Zavragin is going to be our starting goalie in 5-6 years. You're like, even better. Awesome.
Right.
You know, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I'm going to tab him as our starter for the 2027 season or 2028 season. No, you're not making those types of claims here.
No, but I think that that Danny Briere and everybody around him pinpointed something that was like, okay, this attribute could get us over the hump if it hits, you know, with these players. And I thought that was interesting. I also love the fact that he was like straight up Danny Briere themed draft with all the small guys.
That's, I mean, in a realistic way, like that's the way this league is heading. Smaller guys, skilled guys,
right?
Which threw me through a loop with his last pick, Mateo Mann, like 6'5". You're looking at like Sam Morin incarnate right there with decent knees, you know?
Right.
And I love it though. I love that. And he's working with Morin too in camp, from what I understand as well. So I mean, just listen.
Definitely
listen
not
to
doing
him when it comes
squats
to the
together.
play. Yeah, don't do his workout regimen. Just do what he does on the ice.
Right. Stay away from the conditioning portion of his conversation.
Right. Go to someone else for that. Go to, Patrick Sharp or something. But John LeClaire even, hell.
Right.
But no, the draft overall, like, I mean, everybody's given these guys an A for their draft. I don't see a reason why not to. I think they did pretty well in terms of need, in terms of getting the best player available in the top spots that they had.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I honestly think it's really hard to grade a draft the day after when
cop out.
Well, no, it's true though. I mean, like, I think if you just grade it on the first round,
right,
I'm willing to listen to you because I think that you're able to project a little bit more. Like just the fact that they got a player who would never be the 7th pick in any other draft. Right. They got him.
Should have been this year.
Right. That they got Matt Michkov, they get an A+. No one else could hit if he is what we're all expecting him to be, A+ draft.
Right.
But with the rest of them, who knows?
Yeah. Big uncertainty.
Yeah, I am intrigued by the goalie thing though. You start to run through like, okay, so Urson, without hearing anything, I really don't think Carter Hart is long for the Flyers for the long run.
Yeah.
Whether that's his decision or the team's decision or Hockey Canada and the NHL's decision, it's a factor.
Yeah, certainly is.
I just feel like I'm having a harder time seeing it where it's like, okay, you get Urson and then you got these other guys, but
yeah,
we'll
with
see.
Kolosov coming over probably in the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, that kid has been playing lights out. He's one of the best Russian goaltender prospects in recent memory, at least.
Yeah.
Like, they're comparing him already to Sorokin, which...
Sorry, I'm not going to be overly excited about Russian goaltenders right now.
No, and there's a reason for that, which is what we're going to get into next. We've come to that time in the summer like we were last year, where we were all excited. The Flyers have a contract for Fedotov in place. Everything's awesome, hunky-dory. And all of a sudden, he gets stationed in the northernmost point of Russia, and he's playing ice hockey and outside every single day while enjoying the military service. But regardless, there's been an interesting development, the best way to put it, in regards to the contract that he has with the Flyers, because his contract with CSKA did expire.
Yep.
And they're looking to ink him to a 2-year deal. However, the agreement between the KHL and the NHL now is scrapped because of what's going on in the world. You want to call it the geopolitical climate. And yeah, look at me. So it's basically a handshake agreement. It's don't tamper with our guys. We won't tamper with yours, vice versa, whatever. That's cool. Good for you guys.
Right.
And so the KHL seems to be abiding by that right now. There was a statement released stating that the KHL will honor the contract that Fedotov has with the Flyers before a contract is signed with the Russian Army team. Not going to say I believe that. I think that, and again, this is just me, my beliefs. I think the CSKA has a little bit of pull when it comes to if they want a player or not, as evidenced by around this time last year. Yeah. So not going to believe anything until I know for certain that man has landed and stepped foot on American soil with the intent to go to Voorhees.
My name is Ivan Fedotov.
If we see one of those videos, we know.
You genuinely that I am very excited to remain in Russia. I would never, ever, ever, ever leave this place.
Say it.
I mean, we joke, but it's not a joke. Really quick before I kind of give my opinions about it. I was listening to Flyers Daily today, and Bill Meltzer actually gave a really detailed, informative, just like description of the NHL's relationship with the KHL, and like I didn't realize that like essentially Putin is who created the KHL, and that it's run by the Russian government.
So that's why they bend over backwards to make sure the guy scores 7 goals a game. I mean, what other reason is there? The guy, come on.
Right. So, I thought that was interesting. But anyway, he's not coming over. Until I see this guy in a Flyers sweater, you're not going to convince me otherwise. There in some way he's going to end up signing a contract with CSK.
Like I said, it's CSK, not CSKA. I thought it was CSKA.
Know. Is it CSKA?
Yeah, I don't know. The Russian military team.
The SKA, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, we'll call them the Russian military team.
Russian military team.
As long as that is the team that he most recently played for over there in Russia, I will not believe it until, like John said, he's got a Flyers sweater on. He's taking warm-ups at Voorhees, Wells Fargo Center, somewhere around Philadelphia.
And he's got a bodyguard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going there. I'm not making that joke.
I also think that anybody who's taking this and then going, well, what about Michkov? Is this like
different situations?
Very, very different situations.
I could see why though. And I could see why people would draw that comparison. A, because again, both live in Russia, are Russian, and B, given the circumstances unconfirmed around the mysterious death of his father,
right.
I can somewhat understand
Of course. I mean, yeah, I think that like no matter what, there will always be that until he's here. Like there will always be that kind of in the back of your mind because
that. Right. Because of Fedotov and what
because
happened with that.
yeah, and something can happen. I
Yeah.
I mean I
Panarin
know
even.
right. I am not going to sit here and pretend that I know anything about Russia and Russian politics, but from what I read in the news and what I see on
Not good.
TV and stuff, yeah, it seems a little dangerous. So there's
bit.
always going to be something that could change things, but I feel like
Certainly.
preventing somebody of the pedigree that is Matvei Michkov, as
Mhm.
opposed to 7th round pick
Mhm.
Ivan Fedotov, is just very different.
I read something very interesting on Twitter too, and I apologize that I'm not going to be able to credit the source, but if the source is listening or somebody knows the source, please let me know. I want to give credit where it's due. But there was an excerpt where KHL coach or an individual associated with the KHL had basically stated what their viewpoint is when it comes to players like Michkov. They don't want these guys coming over from the KHL to play bottom six roles.
Right.
They are priming them to be stars. They're priming them to be top six, top pairing, starting goalies, within this league, because otherwise it's a waste. You're sending the guy over to be fodder. You're sending over another Lubimov or Medvedev, like what the Flyers had,
Right.
And at that point, they both go back,
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's like when a player is that good, it looks good for your country.
Yeah, it's a notch in your belt there.
Right. I mean, I think anyway.
I mean, that's something to better way to put it. Something to hang your hat on. Like our country produced that superstar. You think everybody in Russia knows who Alex Ovechkin is.
Right.
Everybody knows who Jaromir Jagr is over there in the Czech Republic. Like it goes on and on and on. So being able to hang your hat on the fact that you produced a superstar like him, even at such a young age, depending on when he comes over, like that's a huge accomplishment, and something that his coach can be like, yeah, I hope develop him,
Yeah, but Fedotov, I'm sorry, no one's going to convince me that he's coming over here.
No, I'm not convinced either. But who is coming over to the Flyers this coming up season? Great segue, by the way. Pat myself on the back.
There you go. 3
free agents since the beginning of the free agency period began. First free agent that the Flyers signed, Ryan Poling, center, 1 year, $1.4 million, and will be an RFA at the end of that contract. Thought that was an interesting little tidbit I wanted to add in there.
Like that.
Fourth line guy, like you had said, the Flyers typically have been building from the fourth line out, bringing in free agents. So, I mean, let's start with him. I mean, in terms of what what you expect, let's just dive into it.
Well, he certainly hasn't reached what people were expecting him to become. He's still only 24, former first-round pick. I think this is an interesting one because he does fit into that same age range as like Tippett and Frost, right? And he is a reclamation project. Like, to me, this isn't taking an older guy. This is someone where it's like, okay, you know what? You have not become what everyone was expecting when you were drafted. We're going to give you a shot. It's a 1-year deal. And if he does well on the fourth line, like, great. I don't think that there is any risk to this because you can't even make the argument that it's like an older player blocking a younger player. He is still a younger player.
Right. And I mean, you're looking at a kid who's 6'2", 196 as well. So the build fits a fourth line role. The kid had a hat trick in his first ever NHL game with Montreal during the 18-19 season. So like that's a cool little tidbit. But aside from that, a bit underwhelming. 14 points last year in 53 games. I'm not expecting the world of this guy. He's averaging just under 12 minutes a night. That's a fourth line role right there.
Right. I mean, hey, but maybe something clicks, right? And the Flyers are in a position to do that right now.
Exactly. They can take these reclamation projects on. I mean,
Right.
Owen Tippett's the perfect scenario for that. They
Right.
took him, and honestly, I like the guy already because his birthday is one day after mine. So, fantastic
There you go.
stuff.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and they're going to keep trying these. What was the guy? I already forget his name. Bellows, right? He was another one
Bellows.
they tried, didn't work. But it's like you're in a position right now where it's like you might as well give these kind of deals a shot.
Right. And I mean, it falls right in line with the next deal that they handed out. You know, they brought on Garnett Hathaway, which, say what you will about the person, not a huge fan considering the guy spit on somebody, piece of shit. But now he's part of the Flyers, and I love him. You know, it's started out his career early on in Calgary, really kind of started making a name somewhat for himself with his physical play, at least in Washington.
Yeah.
But I mean, very similar stats to Poling there. You know, he's averaging
Right.
11, 12 minutes a night. He's going to play a bottom line role on the fourth line there, and he's not going to put up points. He's going to be an energy guy, and that fits the mold.
Right. I mean, and like it's really hard to segue to, you know, locker room and culture after he said he spit on somebody.
But he's going to explain the good reason why he had to do it.
Right. You know, he's going to talk about the times you do and don't spit on a guy.
Like this is when you do it. This is when you don't.
Right.
So on and so forth.
But anyway, I think that like he's the kind of veteran you want to bring in, right? He's not blocking a young player. To me, the Flyers focus, and this is where I wanted to get into it a little bit more, is the Flyers focus is bringing in, at least in forwards, bringing in young players who are going to inhabit lines 1 through 3.
Right.
They don't care about the fourth line anymore.
Right.
Like, sorry, Tanner Laczynski. You know,
see ya.
Is he gonna block Wade Allison? Maybe. But
is Wade Allison gonna show us something?
Wade Allison can play on the third line until he blows out his knee.
Right.
You know? So I think that like
history shows
kind of getting a stabilizing line on the fourth line where it's like you do have your older guys. Like if it's this Poling character, Garnett Hathaway and Nick Delorier,
I'm happy.
Yeah. And then guess what?
Pig and shit.
If a player from Lehigh Valley who's younger pushes one of those players out of the lineup, great. Right. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know,
you're going to sit Ryan Poling. Oh, no, he's making $1.4 million. We can't sit him.
Right.
Even Delorier or Hathaway with his contract.
The 2 years for Hathaway, I'm kind of like,
falls in line.
Sure.
Like with the timeline there, I think.
Right. But I also think it might set a precedent too of like what the Flyers are going to be willing to do on their fourth line, where it's like,
sure,
this is the price range. This is the line that we're drawing. So I have no bones to pick with either of these signings.
No, I don't either. I think it's a smart signing. I think you bring in a guy that is going to play tough, you know, and really set an example on the ice.
Right.
And pair him with Delorier. Holy shit.
Right.
I mean, that'll be a fun pairing. That'll be a fun line to watch. I don't care who's centering them, you know, at this point. But
once in a while, put Scott Lawton back on it.
Oh, God.
Talk about a psychopath line.
Someone's going to die. I'm not kidding. Like, someone's going to die if Scott Lawton centers those two. Like, there will be a death on the ice. But Poling, I mean, Christ, Poling's the same size as Lawton, I think, weight-wise. I think Poling might have an inch or two on him, but regardless, you know. But, you know, they've kind of rounded them out in terms of the offense. We'll see a lot of holes being plugged. I think, and we'll get into it later. It doesn't matter right now. But getting to the last signing or most recent signing that they've had so far, at least, Mark Stahl just signed a 1-year deal with the Flyers as well. 36 years old. You know, he's twilight years of his career.
Yep.
You know, I think that goes without saying. Good, decent, however you want to put it, veteran presence. I think he'll be a steady presence on the blue line for some of these kids coming up. Just don't talk about what he did on Pride Night. That's, you know, neither here nor there.
The chucklehead who had to bring that up too. Him and his brother.
We all know. We all know because everybody that didn't put on the jersey, their names have been dragged through the tar and feathered and scarlet letter and everything, But regardless, this was the argument that you were alluding to in terms of blocking the kids.
Right.
And what I wanted to get into, because technically speaking, Mark Stahl could be blocking a guy like Adard or Zamula from an opening night spot on the roster. We talked about it vaguely in the chat earlier today in regards to my thoughts on it. These guys really not being ready to take on a spot. And in that case, BFD, right?
Well, I mean, Danny Briere kind of touched on that in his media availability when the media was asking about Mark Stahl and blocking, right? The young talent, where he said that both him and Tortorella had a conversation with Stahl about that scenario where it's like, if young players are ready, like this is what could happen. But he truly only mentions, like, we're not talking about Cam York because we know he's going to be on the roster, but like when you're thinking about Zamula, Andre, or Ronnie Adard, he only mentions Zamula as being the guy that like they have to give a shot to because he's no longer waiver exempt, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And he says with the rest of them, like, they're going to be patient. Like, unless they show they're ready. And again, if they're ready to go, everybody's going to be fine with them leapfrogging Mark Stahl.
Right. Like, it's Justin Braun again.
Right. But, like, this guy is it from a hockey family. They just breed solid hockey players. He was actually a really good defenseman in his heyday. He is familiar with John Tortorella. He's also somebody, and I guess you could say this about Garnet Hathaway too, where it's like they probably could have gotten contracts with an opportunity to win a little bit more, especially Mark Stahl. I think, he might have been like a seventh defenseman. They're choosing to come into this situation, which I think tells you a lot about like where they are in their careers and understanding like, hey, it's my time to kind of like pay it forward. Which I think we should be happy about. But like, look at this Flyers blue line. Assuming Tony DeAngelo is gone,
right?
You've got Cam York, Rasmus Ristolainen, Travis Sanheim, Mark Stahl, Sean Walker. Is that his name?
Sean Walker. Yep.
Okay, so that's
and Nick
5.
Sealer.
Nick Sealer. That's 6.
Can't forget Sealer.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to think too. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
No. Okay. Well, that's all right. But you've got to think like if Zamula cracks the lineup, how many of the guys that we just listed are you like, oh, he better not take their spot? 3?
Ristolainen.
Yep.
York.
Yep. Sanheim.
I guess you could throw Sanheim in.
You have to.
Like, Sanheim would be a case. Yeah, but like at the same rate, if Sanheim sucks, he should sit. And if Ristolainen's still outperforming him and everybody else, I'm merit-based. I don't like give a shit about your contract.
I think that's a conversation hopefully we don't have to have this season. But I think like considering that like you're married to that guy for a long time, there are 3 players that you're like, okay.
Interchangeable.
Yeah.
Not to mention, too, the guy that they just brought over in the Provorov trade, Helga Grans, like if he can catch his footing and reclaim a bit of his game with Lehigh Valley, he could be eligible for a call-up as well.
Right.
So, I mean, you've got, like, I'm not going to sit here and say, contrary to what you've already said, that we have a deep pipeline. We don't. Like, not by any means.
No, we have bodies.
We have bodies, and we have reclamation projects.
Sure.
Walker to some extent. You've got Grans, and then you've got guys that are going to, if you want to call Zamula, I don't want to call him a reclamation project. He's more of a prove-it type of guy along with Adard. But, like, we've seen Zamula. We've seen him play for the Flyers, and we've seen him play well. We've seen him play like crap.
Right.
So there's definitely, I think Zamula is the one that they're going to give the most opportunity to when it comes to those names, and rightfully so. But
the interesting one to me is going to be Emil Andre, because with the new SHL NHL agreement, if he doesn't make the NHL roster, he doesn't stay in Lehigh Valley. He has to go back to the SHL.
Interesting.
So, I mean, knowing John Tortorella, if he's not ready, he's not going to be on the NHL roster.
Back to Sweden.
But I am curious to see if it's like he's close. You know, we can afford to lose a little bit here. Like,
so is the agreement, or is there some leeway in which Flyers brass can talk to his coach in the SHL and be like, listen, I really want him here, but I'm
not even going to pretend to know. That stuff is so complicated to
That's
me.
a handshake type, we'll figure it out.
Right. But I think like the black and white of it is that if he doesn't make the Flyers, he goes back to the SHL.
Right. And I think that's a good move, honestly, because you're still playing in a professional hockey league against guys where you're
except if you're the organization, you'd love to be able to call them up in January. You know, like
sure, you want to be able to, hey man, we need you. Let's go. And you're not going to be able to do that.
Right.
But in that case too, there's still other names that you can use when it comes to, Grons, when it comes to Addard, when it comes to if you need Zamula. I just the blue line is gonna be a rough one these next couple of years.
But to go kind of full circle, I like the Mark Stahl signing. I don't think he blocks anything.
No.
People seem to just think like when it comes to rebuilding, like you're only playing the kids. That just doesn't work like that. You bring in players like Mark Stahl and Garnet Hathaway and Ryan Pohl. I want to call him Paling so bad.
Poling.
Right.
Poeling.
To fill roster spots. That way you can be patient. Now the big test will be like, hopefully the Flyers aren't Ron Hextall patient.
I can't do another stint like that.
Except only, what was it, Carter Hart, right? He wouldn't, but he was kind of right with Phil Myers.
A little bit. Just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think that whole argument in terms of, you're blocking kids, like, you got to understand it's part of the grand scheme of things. Like you had mentioned, you're not going to play 20, 21, 22-year-old kids throughout the entirety of the lineup. Like you gotta have a mix of veterans in there. And Mark Stahl is a veteran on a blue line that doesn't have someone like him on it at this point.
Yeah.
People aren't going to turn to Travis Sanheim. People aren't going to turn to, Cam York. People aren't going to turn to those guys because they don't have the experience. Mark Stahl's been around the league. He's played in the playoffs. Like he's got that mentality. He knows what it takes.
Right.
And these kids are going to learn something from him. And that's invaluable knowledge to some of these guys. And like you said, someone decides that they're going to outplay Mark Stahl and take his spot, even better. I hope that's the case. And then, boom, come trade deadline, you flip him for a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, whatever it is.
Right.
Return on investment doesn't look that bad because you paid the guy $500,000 for half a season.
Right. And I think like defense is different than forwards.
Right.
Where, it's like there's only 6 defensive spots. But again, like I don't think the Flyers are committed to anybody outside of those 3 that we mentioned, and they're loosely committed to those guys.
I mean, if they could trade Provorov, I'm sure they're not gonna not gonna
But when it comes to forward, and I'm kind of repeating myself, but I like the idea of like if you're a young kid, don't look to take Garnet Hathaway's spot. We don't want that.
No, that's complacency.
We want you to go and aim for the 2nd line, the 3rd line, the 1st line, right? Like, yeah, these are the guys we're going to put on our 4th line. Don't aim for that. We don't really care if that's your ceiling.
Yeah. Your hurdle to get to the NHL just went from here to here. And that means that you really earned it when you're getting into the spot that you're in, because you're not on a 4th line just getting 5-6 minutes a night, penalty killing, stuff like that. You're playing a valuable role on the team.
Right. Well, because and we've had such low ceiling forwards where it's like, I like Danny Briere being like, I'll sign these guys in free agency.
Right.
You show me something else. Right.
We talked about it, I think, a couple episodes ago. Your last line, your fourth line, they're all interchangeable.
Right.
You can sign one next year. You can sign another the
Unless
next.
you're the Islanders, right? Are they all still on the fourth line?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Screw them. But it leaves the Flyers in an interesting spot because you've got now 3 guys who are restricted free agents that you're looking to sign with currently, as it stands, at least $5.5 million. Now, that does not include the salary that we're going to likely dump when we trade Tony DeAngelo. And it also does not include the salary from putting Ryan Ellis on long-term injured reserve. Ellis.
But we can't use that money until we put him on long-term injured reserve, right?
You're right. But I also think in terms of the rules for signing a player that you could, as soon as you put him on LTIR, you could sign one of these guys. I think. I could be completely wrong there. Correct me if I am.
I will never understand it. Somebody could lay it all out for me, and I still won't get it. But
look at him like you're speaking a foreign language. Like, what?
Right.
But if he goes on LTIR, right then and there, that bumps you up to over $11 million. Even if you're retaining a half on Tony DeAngelo's contract, add that to Ellis's, you're sitting at about $13-14 million right there in cap space.
So let's take away Ellis for a second. You said they had like 5 and change.
Yeah.
And then you add DeAngelo's half. So that's like 2.5.
You got
8
that's like total.
8. Okay. I mean,
you'd have
8 million isn't going to sign you these 3 players.
Oh, it absolutely will. In my mind.
Sure. Yeah, it's got to.
Yeah. You got to think York will probably be the priciest.
Yep.
And by pricey, I don't mean like we're going to be shelling out $6 million for him now. He might get 3. Might get 3 if they're looking to much of
because he doesn't have much of a resume.
Right.
Like he hasn't played a full season yet.
Right. And like with Cates, I know we talked about like a long-term deal, $3 million a year. Even if he got 3 and York got 3, right there, that's $6 million. And you got 2 more left for Morgan Frost, which I think's a fair deal.
Right.
You know, Frost is kind of the same way where last year, yes, great, did really well, but it was just last year. And that was really his first full throttle NHL season where he was playing every single game that he could without being sent back down to the AHL.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you can get it done. I am curious to see if he's going to try to get more than York. Cause I know it's like defenseman and forward. But again, he has more of a track record.
Right.
But again, I think the amount of money they have, they can get these 3 signed.
Yeah. And I mean, they didn't paint themselves in any corner in regards to the free agents that they've got. So, I mean, they did pretty well in regards to that. And you got to account for as well. Ellis goes on LTIR. That frees up 6. And right then and there, you got $6 million going into the season where teams are smart to weaponize the cap and be able to use that to their advantage. So, I mean, they're in a decent enough spot that, you know, they're setting themselves up for a pretty solid couple seasons moving forward here.
Right.
With the continuation of being able to shed some contracts that they need to, bring in guys on lower end deals, have them prove it, bigger deals down the line, so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that like, even though we're going to be in for another 2-3 years of not great on ice product, like this is the first time in a while I've been excited about the team, you know, where it's like, I can buy into everything that's happening and I know what's happening. It's exciting to be a Flyers fan right now if you truly understand the process, right? If you're somebody who wants a winner next year, it ain't gonna happen. But like for me, I can go into next year like understanding this is a rebuild and being excited to watch certain players.
Right. It's been so long since we felt anything towards this team. So the draft coupled with the direction that this team is going and the steps that they're taking in that direction, it's exciting stuff. And we should be excited about it. We can be happy.
Right.
Like it's possible. Team's still not going to be good. But there's a direction. There's certainly a direction, certainly something that this team's aiming for. And I think that's a positive.
And I trust who's in charge right now.
Yes.
Whether it's John Tortorella, Danny Briere, Keith Jones. Who's
Kevin
Kevin Jones?
Kevin Jones.
Is
I
he
don't know.
somebody, Kevin? I mean,
Probably.
it sounds like there's got to be a million people named Kevin Jones.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right.
At least you didn't say Kevin Hayes, and that'll be the last time ever that we reference Kevin Hayes on this podcast. So, like you had mentioned, bringing it full circle.
Yeah, there we go.
Kevin Hayes kicked off the show. Kevin Hayes is going to end the show.
There it is.
There it is. With that, John, let everybody know where they're going to be able to find you.
Well, you can find this podcast on all your various podcast listening receptacles. I'm not going to list them. Derek got really excited for a second because he thought I might list them. I'm still not going to list them.
I got more excited about the fact that you just went straight into that. I thought we were going to nix it all together.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm a pretty good reader here. Like, I know you don't like doing that.
Well, I just think it's silly at this point.
I'm not going to disagree, but there's certain instances.
I guess I should just be like, this podcast is everywhere. It's
Find us.
everywhere.
Everywhere. We had a ticker, but because Hoagie's not on here, I think
we're in
yeah.
your pillowcase.
Here we go. There we go. It's right there on the
in
bottom.
the space between your sheets of toilet paper.
Facebook, the receptacles. You got
Everywhere.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spreaker.
Do people actually listen on Spreaker?
I used to, just because it got us extra downloads.
All right, now you've got me reading this.
There you go, man. It's doing your job for you at this point.
Well, there it is. All right, but yeah, we're there, and it'll be great.
Yeah, that ticker's like Danny Brio. You're like Chuck Fletcher. Anyways, I'm on Twitter at Pod Street Bob. John's on Twitter, Pod Street Go. We're all on Twitter at Pod ST Bullies. Matt Casey, Pod Street Casey. Hoagie, Pod Street Hoags.
Don't shout out those fools.
I'm going to shout them out just because they missed this week. But, I mean, I thought the chemistry was really good here. I thought this was a great episode.
So we're firing them?
I think so.
On air?
On it right now. You want to do it?
You're fired.
You're fired. Get out of here. Pack your bags. Get your shit. Get out now.
We're just talking to you, Hoagie.
No severance package either.
Right.
Yeah, you're done. You're done. You'll never make it in this town.
You have to foot the Spreaker and StreamYard bill for the next 2 years.
That was in your contract.
Right.
Fine print.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fellas. Folks, everybody listening, hope you have a wonderful week ahead. And as always, we'll see you next time.
Bye now.